she listed as free.
Hey, can you guys hear me? There.
Yep, I can hear you now.
All right, the hour of 6:30 having arrived, I'd like to call the regular Plan Commission meeting for the City of Columbus to order. Matt, will you please take the roll call?
Sure.
Present.
Here.
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 All right, so we have a quorum. All right, I want to note that this meeting was properly posted and noticed in accordance with Wisconsin open meeting laws. I'd like to have a motion to approve the agenda, but I have a suggestion for consideration for reorganizing the agenda. The school district is listed under 8B, giving a presentation about the school project and upcoming zoning approvals. They are present virtually tonight. If we want to consider moving them up higher in the agenda, we can do so. And we could move unfinished business to somewhere else in the agenda. So either moving 8B up and just sliding everything down or swapping a couple things around. So I'll let anybody entertain that.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the agenda with the reorganization as noted.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Sorry about that.
All right, I have a motion and a second to, well, Paul, will you specify where you think we ought to put 8B?
I'll make a motion to move 8B ahead of unfinished business and then continue 7A, 8A, and then 8C.
All right, very good. The second, does that support that?
Yes.
All right. A motion and a second to revise our agenda to include 8B after number 6 and then continue in order. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we'll work with that amended agenda. Next item is to approve the minutes from the November 12 meeting, which are printed on the second page of your packets.
Alder Piper will make a motion to approve the minutes from 11/12/2020 Plan Commission meeting.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as printed. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed by no. All right, minutes from November 12 are approved. All right, item number 6, we have some time for, or a spot here for citizen comments. There aren't any citizens present in the room. Matt, are there any appearing on Zoom virtually?
Is anybody in the meeting? Move on to the.
Yep, agreed, hearing none. We'll move on to item 8B. It's under new business. Our amended agenda moves it up. So we have some representatives from the Columbus School District. There's a large school project coming up, and it sounds like you'd like to kind of give us an update on it and keep us apprised of upcoming zoning approvals. Matt, do you want to introduce the speakers, or you want the speakers to introduce themselves?
Well, I see Allison's on, and let's see, I can't see the list now that I did that. Who else is on from this school board? I'm sorry, or from the school district? Nobody? Are you muted?
Hi, this is Al. There's 2 other members from Gray Architects.
Okay.
Maria Welch and Andrew Taylor.
Okay. I was going to say, I don't think I've as familiar with them as others on the project team, so I'm sorry that I didn't I guess recognize that. So they sent me a PowerPoint that I am sharing on my screen right now with everyone, and I guess from there I'll let Allison go, and since I'm kind of managing the slides, you just tell me when to go.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Allison Newstone. I'm an architect with Gray Architects, and we've been working with the Columbus School District on the project. So what you see right now is the site plan for the elementary school addition and renovation project. So in yellow is the proposed addition on the northeast side of the site. It comprises of a cafeteria addition, gymnasium, and 2-story academic wing. And then we will have some renovations within the gray existing building. The site plan includes some renovations of front entry plaza, which is currently where Smooth Receiving Drive is, and then relocating the existing playfields. we're going to maintain the existing parking lot and keep the existing drive as intact as possible during this process. A large part of this project includes vacating an existing right-of-way which runs through the site, which actually, if you'd like to flip to the next slide, that might show it a little bit better. Yeah, so on the north side of this property, adjacent to the residential parcel, there's a vacated right-of-way that the district is in communications with that property owner to purchase and take over that parcel.
So just to interject, that was Spring Street and Fountain Street that were originally platted and ran right through the middle of the school's property that, for whatever reason, hadn't been vacated during past projects that needed to be vacated to clean that up for zoning approvals for this project. So,
Yes, thank you.
yep.
And then if you see there's a blue dashed line running through the site, that indicates a FEMA floodplain, and that is another permitting approval process that we are working with for this project. In order to deal with stormwater containment on the system, there will be an underground containment system that is within or below the green space, the recreational green play area, which is on the northeast corner of the site. Like to move to the next slide.
Mm-hmm. Here's
So
a,
these are elevations of the additions. The majority of the addition will be a brick to match the existing building, trying to maintain the existing color palette as much as possible while updating them slightly. This is black and white, but we will show some renderings shortly. Other materials include a cream metal panel, which is similar to the existing color palette, and then bringing in a wood tone metal panel just to give it a slightly more modern tone and some more. So yeah, what we're seeing here is some gym elevations and then the classroom pod elevations with a smaller.
okay.
And then that angle roof is the front. Want to go down that some, to zoom in slightly, possibly see some of these renderings.
I have a,
Yeah, that's okay.
I have a quick question.
Sure, go.
Yeah, go ahead.
Those higher windows, are those simply high windows? This is not a two-story project, is it?
The classroom portion is a two-story piece. So
Oh, it
that
is.
on the northwest corner of the site, but there. So as you look at that second rendering, that's on the courtyard. So there is a two-story element to this building. So that's classrooms. So this is the front entrance. Looking from the parking lot, what you see on the left-hand side is the existing multi-purpose room. We will be turning that into that administrative portion of the building, so the offices for staff, and then creating a new entry vestibule, and then the angled roof portion that you're looking at is the cafeteria. So here we're standing in the courtyard. Behind us is the existing building. If you can imagine where their current playground is now, we'd be looking at that playground, but instead we're wrapping the building around. And so we're creating that academically that I mentioned to you. And then the windows all the way to the right are the cafeteria. And now we're standing all the way on the north side of the site. Right behind us would be neighboring houses. And so we're looking on the right side where you see a combination of frame metal panels and brick. That is that two-story classroom addition I mentioned. And then on the left side is the gym.
Jim, okay.
And so this is where we're relocating their playground too. So here in front of us is the blacktop, and if you can imagine to the left, that will be where the playground is. Is there any questions about the elementary school design before we move on to high school?
Sorry, Oop, too much.
So at the high school, a lot of our work is interior. In yellow, you can see where we're doing the addition. It's just off of, I guess, the east side of the building. You can imagine north is actually to the right on this plan. And then we do have some renovation and roof replacement just adjacent to that addition. It will be a cafeteria addition and expansion. We're actually moving the cafeteria location in the high school. And then on the site, you know that there's that large circle drive currently. We are reconfiguring that circle drive to accommodate our addition. There will be a plaza outside of the cafeteria, so that's that lighter gray shape adjacent to the cafeteria addition. And then there will be access to a receiving area, which is part of our addition as well. So you see how the circle drive kind of stretches up towards the building. We do have a bid alternate as part of this project to redo the landscaping at the front entrance, which is on the right side of this plan. Currently, there is no canopy at the, or there is a canopy at the front entrance, but there's a proposal to reconfigure that canopy to match our new addition, so that is a bid alternate. It's not part of the base scope. Move to the next slide. Here, this is just the civil plan, so it's showing the base scope. It does not show that bid alternate I was just referring to, but it outlines in more detail how we reconfigure that circle drive and incorporate the plaza outside. We don't have to go through the same permitting issues that we do at the elementary school, right-of-way restrictions or floodplain.
Oh, these are just the elevations, okay.
So here is the elevation at the front of the school. We are taking our inspiration from the mid-century vintage of the building, so using a lot of the horizontal lines and the tapered piers at this front of the building. It is a larger mass though, so we're really trying to make it a kind of a focal piece. We do intend to keep that arch at the front of the building though, which you will see when we get to the renderings. And then another piece, so at these bottom, so that bottom elevation is actually around on the side of the building. We are adding some additional windows to the library and museum. So that's a smaller piece of the exterior. So here is that exterior rendering. You can see we're matching the cream color of the brick on the existing building and that dark anodized metal for the roof edges. We're also bringing in the wood tone, like we're doing at the elementary school, just for that bit of warmth. And you can see just beyond the glass, there's that existing arch. We're trying to make this sort of like an artifact within a museum box, really show off that historical piece of the school. So it's still there, it's still encapsulated in our new addition. Along that front piece of glass, you see those tapered piers, which are very similar to the existing building, which you kind of see in the distance on the left side of the rendering. And then in the foreground, that is that cafeteria plaza, which we're trying to create a student-owned space, both interior and exterior. Are there any questions about the high school project?
Don't necessarily see any. I saw, as we were starting the meeting, I didn't see Annette or Troy Marshall from the school district join until through the presentation. So I just want to ask Annette or Troy if they have anything they wanted to share with the Plan Commission tonight.
No, nothing to add. Thank you for listening to the presentation. Allison and Maria were here to provide the information. We were just here to answer any questions that the commission might have for us.
Okay. Thank you. So just for the plan commission, understanding, both by code, the high school and elementary school need a conditional use permit. And either in the January or February, depending on the time frame, when the final design is completed and submitted, that will be coming to plan commission for review and approval. So, in our discussions with the school board or the school's project team, we thought it would be helpful to have an informational a kind of update on what's being proposed. And I think something similar might happen with council as well at some point too here as well. So I guess there was no action on this item tonight, but I just wanted to make everybody aware. So I guess one last time, does anybody have any questions for the school district team?
Is there a timeline for the project?
Yeah, so, our construction documents will be completed February 19th, and it goes out to bid at that point, and then construction will begin, April 1st.
Is there any reason that we couldn't move the street vacation portion to an earlier spot if necessary? Because I'm thinking in my head, you've got street vacation, you probably have a certified survey map, right?
Yes.
Right.
The street vacation's actually completed. That started in September.
Okay, so that was all council.
That was one of the ones that it was a 40-day process. So I think we initially met with the school board's project team or the school district's project team back in August, and that's where they got the ball rolling with the FEMA. They're going through a LOMA application, and then also we realized early on that the right-of-way needed to be vacated to properly construct the project and complete the project. So based on City Attorney Johnson's recommendations, we went through that process, and as I said, we basically had to notify the public, and it was a 40-day comment period by state statute.
That's why I brought it up. I didn't know it had been done, and it started having alarm bells in my head. So okay, good.
And it was one of those things where glad we started it early, because once we were like, oh, it's a 40-day, I think everybody learned a little bit about the process. So we have to go through it again. We know it's a somewhat lengthy process. All right.
That's all I had to, was just clarification on that Fountain Road, but that's,
Yep.
answered it, so. Looks great otherwise. Nice work, everybody.
So, okay.
All right. No more comments from commission members. I'll thank you, school board and representatives, for keeping us informed. So, good, best of luck in meeting your timeframes, and we'll see you in a month or so.
Thank you.
All right. So moving on in our agenda, we're back to unfinished business, item 7A. Deliberate and make recommendation to the council regarding an ordinance to create section 114-19 of the City of Columbus Code of Ordinances establishing individual solar energy systems. I'm looking back at the minutes from the last meeting. Last meeting, we held a public hearing, and then I guess left all the rest of the business for this
meeting. It was one
right?
of those ones where, before the last meeting, I had a close contact and was sent home, and we didn't even know if we were going to have the meeting. And then we just kind of decided, well, the public notice was already published in the paper, so let's just meet to hold the public hearing and then act at a later date, which was perfectly within our rights to do so. So that is the route we took. we probably could have held the full meeting, but when everything was decided, it was kind of, yeah. So this has been actually talked about for, I feel like a couple months now. And the draft ordinance is in your packet. I'm sharing it on the screen as we speak. And the one, I guess, item that I still would like some clarification on, that as the zoning administrator, that, and this was a model ordinance or a recommended ordinance that basically our city attorney recommended from Cross Plains. This was basically implemented in Cross Plains. So we're not the only community trying to get out ahead of the solar systems and trying to make sure that it's adequately handled by zoning. But the one issue that I still have a little concern over is item 5, when you're talking about if somebody puts a solar, individual solar system on their property, that basically their neighbor may or may not be able to grow a tree or plant a tree because it would block the sunlight, is essentially what number 5 was. And I know we had some discussion at this about this. I want to say it was at the September meeting, but I don't think we had any sort of final recommendation for council. So I guess with that, I believe Plan Commission's been told about this project in the past, and I guess I'll just open it up for comment.
Well, thank you for mentioning number 5, because that's the first thing that my eye was drawn towards. Again, it doesn't seem like we made any progress on that, because I remember having that concern when I first read it. It's like, no person control over property. We're talking that implies the landowner of the person putting the, or it implies to me at least, the landowner putting the solar arrays. Well, you can't really, or it doesn't seem fair to regulate what your neighbors may or may not do that also may hinder the use of this solar array. So I thought we were talking about that, and I know we never really came to a final conclusion, but this obviously does not recognize that either. So I'm just concerned about, like, what a neighbor, we're telling a neighbor now he can't put a tree, or we're telling a neighbor he can't do this if it's too close to this. It doesn't seem, something still seems off. So thank you for mentioning that.
Well, it's, I don't know if it seems off. I get the intent behind it. If you're a property owner and you make a substantial investment into your property to put an individual solar system up, you'd want some assurance that, you're going to get the full use out of this, out of what you installed. And if you install something and 2 years later there's a tree that's blocking the sunlight that was, that was planted, and that's what the intent behind number 5 is basically to prevent that. If the solar system's up, then your neighbor needs to be cognizant of what is on your property and try to essentially be respectful when it comes to planting trees or shrubs. There's a lot of gray area there. It's going to be hard to enforce as the zoning administrator. A lot of times, when people are planting trees, they don't think to call the city and say, hey, can I just plant a tree? I mean, some of the other stuff people will not call the city on. So I think, like in this case, the trees would be even harder to prove for the city. That said, I do think there should be some assurance for the property owner who's making the investment of the solar array system that if they put this on their property, that they will get use out of that. So for the time being, that's why it's left in there as it is. And I guess I wanted to see some discussion to see if there is something that may be able to address this. So.
I'd suggest a couple of things here, just for orderliness of conversation. I'm guessing most people will have some opinion or input about this, so I'd actually kind of like to go around the horn. I think that would kind of help from the disorganization of people talking over each other on Zoom. I know my experience with it is that a lot of people start at the same time, not knowing the intent of the other. So, but first, Matt, this has not been revised as compared to what we have seen before? In other words, you haven't worked in any other
No,
comments that we had very early on. So this is
Other
essentially
than-
unchanged.
Other than changing it from, I think, solar to calling it individual solar energy systems.
Okay,
I think we changed what we called it, but other than that, I never really got any specific comments. I mean, if I did, I guess I didn't realize it, but I have not received any specific comments about item number 5 or any other items in the ordinance. It was more about the wording of what we're calling it,
right,
so.
okay. Has Brad joined us?
I do not see him waiting in the
Okay.
waiting room.
Okay. I recall he had some comments last time, so.
I know he did.
Okay, so that, I'd kind of like to call on members one by one, or have you call on them, Matt, one by one, and we'll go around a couple times to
Yeah, I don't see him in the waiting room.
allow kind of, rebuttal or continued conversation, but, so, if you
Well,
wouldn't mind
okay.
starting with somebody,
Sure.
and let's
Sure,
go.
we'll just do those who are on Zoom first. So Eric, do you have any comments on the proposed ordinance?
Just a couple. For item 5, I've kind of gone back and forth in my head with it as we've been talking through it, and I agree with you, Matt. I see the intent of it, and I get it. But tonight I'm not having problems with it. The only thing I might add, and maybe it's included above, and I missed it while I was reading through, but would we want to change that to say, like, shall place or install obstruction, which would include tree or shrub? I guess we're just limiting it to just trees and shrubs. Is there, the concern of, again, a fence or an addition, or is that sort of going to be handled differently? I guess was my only other comment. Specifically, what I changed in 5, again, I've gone back and forth, but went around to it. I guess I see the intent. I don't know what else I would change or how I would change that, besides just maybe a couple word changes there. But as far as the ordinance goes, I don't think I would take it out. But just a comment there on the so no person in control of the property shall install or replace an obstruction. It would be my only comment. In addition to tree or shrub, but some thoughts on that.
Okay. I think that makes sense. I mean, because then you're adding to it. One thing I probably should actually clarify as well is that under 2 it says permitted as conditional uses. So we're getting deep in the weeds about the shadows, but a lot of times when these things are going to be approved, there's going to be a high level of review that's going to go into them. I mean, they're going to have to go through Plan Commission and Council. So some of these issues would most likely be alleviated during the time of approval, because we're going to require them to give us some sort of site plan. And on the site plan, it's going to show where it's going to go on their property. And one of the things we can request is, well, what's around your property? I mean, what are there trees there, or what's there? So, I mean, you'd have some sort of record from that. You could have some sort of record then that would indicate what the site was like when the project was approved. So, that was something that I just thought of when Eric was speaking. So, I just wanted to clarify that. Katie, do you have any thoughts on this?
No, I agree with Eric. I think it needs to say something about an obstruction. I think that was a nice catch. I do like your point, Matt. I understand, yes, that we'll go through other review processes and stuff before it's actually installed. But just so we're clear that it's not just a tree or shrub that could shadow it. And I think I just brief discussion the last time about, if I recall correctly, we had discussion about, well, if the solar panels are there first, then you can't plant a tree or a shrub. It's whichever was there first. So it also goes the opposite direction that, nobody can put the solar panels somewhere where it's, why would you put it somewhere where it's already shaded? I don't know, but
Yeah.
so, just so that.
And you're correct. I think Paul shared that at the council meeting when this was discussed, that it's going to be whichever was there first basically wins. So if the tree was there first, you better find a different spot for your solar system. If your solar system was there first, you better find a different spot for the tree.
May I interject?
That's all I wanted to bring up.
Yep, okay.
May I interject to that
Sure.
point? I get that. I'm just still concerned, let's see, the solar arrays are placed. Let's see, 5 years down the road, a new neighbor moves next door and they're not aware of this. And as you said previously, trees, not everybody submits a plan for where they want the trees, and you plant a tree. And I guess I'm just having issues with no person in control of a property shall allow. So is a person who owns the property with the solar array gonna, what duty do they have to the neighbor saying, hey, you can't plant that tree? It may, do they then go to the city and then, and I mean, I just am having an issue with the no person in control of the thing shall allow this to happen. Well, if it's a, neighbor 5 years down the road.
Yeah.
And nobody knows about it, that's where I'm having issues with it.
So the only, and I'll have to talk about this with Paul. I guess the one thing that could be a workaround is, when we, when conditional uses are now approved, we actually record the conditional use permit with the county. So Paul has that legal document. I mail it to the county once we get the signatures from the mayor and the clerk, and it's recorded. So you can go out and find the Taco Bell or the Gates Automotive. So now that we're doing that, if you recorded them, but you also recorded it for the neighboring properties, then if you bought the property and you got a title search, you theoretically should get that at the time of closing. It's not a fail-safe way. It's not 100% foolproof, but that might be a way to at least notify people that this type of situation is out there.
Sort of like showing, let's say, I know it's not an easement, but showing sort of like a hatched area on the site plan saying you shall not plant anything or build anything here that's going to hinder the use of their previous solar array. I mean, so it'd be on the survey itself.
Yeah. Another potential solution, now that I'm thinking about this, or it's probably more of a short-term solution than a long-term solution, but for residential districts, say we put in the ordinance that the only place you can have a individual solar system in a residential district is on the roof. Because if you did that, the time it takes, shrubs wouldn't be a problem then. At that point, the only thing that would be a problem is a tree. So by the time the tree, if your neighbor planted a tree, by the time it probably becomes a problem, the useful life of your solar array has probably been used up already. It might not be a good way to do it, but that's a thought. If we just exclusively made residential districts rooftop only, it might get rid of some of these conflicts. I don't know. Thoughts?
I don't know, I think that'd be good. That's kind of where I was thinking too, is there a way to notify neighboring property owners when this gets approved and they have one that, or is there, I guess as you just said, and I thought, is it a part of the approval that you would need to have neighbors sign off if I want to add a solar panel? Hey, I'm notifying you I'm gonna have this. You're notified that you may be limited in what you want to plant or grow around it later on. I guess is that something that should be added into that approval that, you know, we're getting approval by the neighbors that would be impacted on that to sign off on that. And then it becomes, I hate to say it, but I think that's the legal definition of it, right? You're moving into that nuisance later. If it's a later property owner that buys the house, like, it's a nuisance that's there, that they're, you know, it's not a, I don't know.
Yeah.
I guess, how you define that, but I think I was reading that it's a coming to nuisance at that point. So it's been approved, it's there, it's policy that the landowners around it are agreed to, and then a later owner moving there should be notified. If not, I guess it's coming to a nuisance that this has been in place approved. And, I don't know. Again, I guess I was with you, you know, Paul, the last one too. I was really having struggles with number 5, and again, coming around to it, I see why it's there. I'm not for limiting the neighbors' rights on what they want to build and plant and do later. So I struggled with that, but again, I see why 5 is there. I guess I do like where you said that too, just the notifier. If there's a way we can do that. I don't know if it is getting neighbors sign off approval, part of the approval process. So at least then that's done, and then it's just a coming to nuisance at that point. But just kind of speaking out loud with
Yep.
thoughts on number 5.
Okay. The one thought is, yes, we could have the neighbors some sort of agree to it. The one thing to keep in mind though is neighbors change, people sell houses, so I don't know if that would work as well as maybe a recorded document. And the other thing to keep in mind is
Well,
as they go.
Once you have that approval, and sorry to cut you off, Matt, then it's a built and established thing. So the next neighbor, you know, needs to know that.
Yeah.
For me, this is a new thing, right? It is for everybody. So I guess it's just new policy that we're all trying to establish here. So
Yeah.
I guess it's just going to be. I think of that, but I think it's just going to be something new that realtors are going to have to know and make sure it's communicated, and buyers are going to have to know that if they're looking for that, you know, land and what's around it. I don't know. I hope we all, you know, not to say everyone's going to know the code or know that buy into it, but it's part of buying and selling. And I guess if it's established at that point, you've gotten the approval from your neighbors in that time, or property owners in that time, and now it's established, it's there. So it's a coming to nuisance that the next purchaser of the neighboring lot has to deal with, or at least know that they're buying into that. So I hate to create more tape for the person that wants to put up a solar panel, but I guess as part of doing that, you know, make sure also for them protecting themselves, that the neighbors aren't going to have any issues with it, current neighbors.
Yeah.
Next neighbors, I guess it's on them as their purchase, so. I don't know, again, thoughts for discussion, but those are mine, so.
The other thing I was going to share was the conditional use process basically notifies every neighbor as the public notification rules that every adjacent and abutting property owner gets notice from this. Basically, I send them a memo saying what we put in the newspaper. So, I mean, they would be noticed. Whether or not they read it or whether or not they know what it pertains to, that's a whole other thing. But, yeah. Jason, before we go around here in the chambers, do you have anything to add?
With number 5, I do like the tree or shrub. I think we're going to get very gray waters if we tell somebody they can't build a certain building or an outbuilding if our code already allows it. And then in this code says, oh no, we can't build it here. I just think I like the tree or shrub in number 5 is what I was thinking. But I also like your individuals in residential areas have to have it on their roofs. I like that also.
Okay.
If I could add, Jason, my thought was obstruction is, if you're building, you're probably looking for Matt for zoning already on that, and you're gotta go through that first, and then, so it's, I don't know, I guess it's an obstruction, so it's not saying your addition is gonna be an issue, as long as it's not this
Or neighbors will call their additional structure.
yeah.
Right, yeah.
But most likely your addition, well, actually, I shouldn't say most likely. I know your addition probably doesn't cause shadows on your neighbor's properties, right?
The one behind us it does.
Okay.
Yeah, when I was staring off into space, I was like trying to think of the angle of the sun. 70 degrees.
Well, yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's a long, tall shadow.
That is right. In the wintertime, it's much different than. All right, I guess we'll go around the chambers. We'll start with Paul and with the chair.
I pretty much said what I had to say. I'm just mainly concerned about telling other neighbors, and if they move in after, like 5-10 years down the road, that's the issue I'm having.
Remind me, Matt, conditional uses require a public hearing,
Yes.
not simply notification?
Yes. Well, that is why we notify them.
Right,
We
right.
we
Tell them that
notify
there's a
them
public
that
hearing and here it
at the
is.
next
Okay.
plan commission at 6:30, there's going to be a public hearing about this item.
Okay.
For more information, contact me. And nobody, very rarely do I get a call on it.
Yeah. Well, I'm extremely uncomfortable with number 5. The idea of a public hearing where neighbors are notified makes me only slightly less uncomfortable. My opinion is that the planning of such a panel, the onus should be on the property owner who's intending to build it. In other words, if I'm a property owner, I need to think about proper planning, right? Are trees going to go on a neighbor's property? If so, where can I put this on my property that is going to avoid problems altogether? One of the issues with not allowing a tree or shrub, and I'll talk about the idea of putting an encumbrance on another property through this public hearing and conditional use process in a minute. But it seems to me like the only way there's very little chance of avoiding it before it happens, right? Very little chance of avoiding having a neighbor put something up, and you're always working from behind. You're always working to get a neighbor to take out something that they've already installed that they're unaware of. The concept of going through a public hearing for a conditional use, having that conditional use approved, and then recording something at the county on a property that that owner hasn't had sort of explicit approval to, I'm not certain that you could even legally do that. I think you would have to have them sign off on it.
That's why I had to check with Paul, because I wasn't sure, but my thought behind the recording was then there's something on the title search that says, hey, your neighbor has this, and you need to be aware.
That is a much better, I mean, that if you're going to put an encumbrance on a neighbor, that's a much better way of doing it and much more defensible than having something in code that's, an encumbrance on, the property that has a solar panel on it, but not an adjacent property. So I think that's a potential mechanism. I'm not sure that that's feasible without having the neighbor themselves agree to having that placed on a property. I mean, even like a construction lien, there's a whole process before you can stick a lien on somebody's property and making it an encumbrance on that. So I don't know that I could recommend approval for this with number 5 even in here. I know that differs from other people, and vote obviously how you feel is best. But I feel like even if number 5 were not in there, or if number 5 were not in there, the rest of it could stand on its own, and this could be amended at a later date. So we could do one of multiple things, right? Approve it as it is, approve with some amendment, take number 5 out altogether, or wait until some of these answers or questions get answered. I'm open to any or all of it, but I feel like if I were a property owner that wanted to put a solar panel on it, I sort of feel like I'd want to go through I think it's reasonable for everybody to expect me to go through my own due diligence and place it on a location that is going to be reasonably free from any problems. I don't know.
Sure, but let me just play devil's advocate just for the point of thinking. So you go and do all your due diligence, and let's say 3 years later, a neighbor plants a tree where you know it's going to create shade on your solar array. So you've done all your due diligence, yet you're still going to lose, I guess the value or the that the solar array or the solar system would bring you. So that I think as I said, I guess I'm glad I'm on this side of the table and not that side of the table, because this is definitely one. The more I've thought about it, it's a tricky part of this ordinance, and maybe I should have had Paul join us tonight as we discussed it. But also, just so everybody knows, this is going to the COW then the council, because I have a feeling this is probably going to have a lot of discussion at the council level too, and maybe it won't. But this is like that number 5 is as I said, it's the tricky part of this ordinance. I think we do need one as a zoning administrator. Right now, our code is very vague when it comes to these types of projects, and I would rather be proactive than reactive and have something in there. So even if it was just conditional use, and then hopefully the conditional use would get rid of the problems necessarily, or take care of most of the problems. But and maybe 5 is solving a problem that we don't need to solve at this time. And I think that's a fair.
I concede that is true, right? Planting a small tree will take some time for it to even get to be a problem.
Hopefully, yeah.
Right.
Hopefully, I'll be retired before any of these.
Right,
are a
which,
problem. So,
but that also
person
puts
can deal
into
with
into question, well, if we're solving a problem that doesn't exist, why are we muddying the waters? But,
yep. Katie?
Yeah, Katie.
I just wanted to chime in here and, maybe play a little devil's advocate around with Matt too, or like Matt too. I keep imagining, like, for example, I live in a 1-story house that actually is pretty close to a lot of other homes and, not like huge property lines or there's trees all over the place that are actually really mature. I'm trying to imagine a place where I could put a solar panel that, even with all the due diligence that I can think of, there's always going to be a chance that somebody could actually plant a tree, and I don't know how many years it would take to actually obstruct the view, and so that depends on the type of tree that it is and how fast it grows, or obstruct the light amount that hits it. But I don't think that there's a safe place that's 100% safe in my scenario, and I'm sure that there's a lot of scenarios that are not 100% safe. But I do think the rooftop thing that you brought up earlier, Matt, is probably best, I think, for residential areas. I think most of us seem to agree on that. But number 5, I guess I'm okay with number 5. I think you're much more limited where you can put solar panels than you are where you can plant a tree. And I understand that you're you are potentially restricting your neighbors, but I don't think that the restriction is outweighs the benefits of promoting solar energy. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. What's the opposite of devil's advocate?
Angel's advocate? I don't know.
That sounds a little too self-righteous on my part,
Okay.
so I won't use that phraseology. In number 3, it talks about complying with all requirements for accessory structures. Is there a height limit on an accessory structure?
Yeah, it's 20 feet.
Okay.
For
So,
detached.
for detached.
Well, let me rephrase. It's 20 feet, or it's got to be it can't exceed the height of the principal structure,
Okay.
I believe.
So how does that fit in with the idea of putting a solar panel on a residential structure? Does number 3 then need to be changed to say if it's freestanding, it has to meet the requirements of an accessory structure? If you treat the solar panel as an accessory structure, but you put it on the principal structure, is it really an accessory structure? It's part of the principal.
No, yeah, you're right. It wouldn't be.
Okay.
I mean, and yeah.
So there might need to be some clarification
Well,
with regard to that.
Quite frankly, if we just want residential to be only on rooftops, I think that first sentence of number 3 would be reworded, because then the requirements for accessory structures really aren't necessary, because it's just going to be attached to the most likely. Well, I guess it could be attached to a detached garage as well, but I guess when you start thinking about requirements for accessory structures, you start thinking about, well, setbacks, building heights, things like that. In this case, if it's just attached to the roof, we could put, they're only allowed in the roof and may not exceed 5 feet, or some trying to guess like what an average solar, or maybe not guess, but find out what this would add to your roof. So let's say if you're right at the maximum height allowed, and you added an extra 2 feet for a solar array or solar system, that you wouldn't then violate the zoning code. I mean, it's just kind of, that makes sense.
I'm sorry to drag this on, but I just, my mind is going, let's say it's I'm just talking hypothetical here, but you have a single-story house with a vacant lot next door.
Mm-hmm.
And you put the solar array, whether it be on the roof or if we're saying it's on the roof, and then we'll just say it's on the roof for now, and then next door, where it's allowable by zoning, a 2-story house, and let's say it's I'm not sure what the maximum height, but for hypothetical, we'll say 40 feet. In the winter sun, could the height of that new house obstruct the solar array that's on a roof, whatever? So now, are we going to tell a person they can't build I know this comes into zoning, then house height or building height and offsets and whatnot, but if that were to impede upon their solar array, are we going to say that we can't build a 2-story house there?
Well, if we include the word obstruction and put that in there, then I guess, but then there's got to be some level of and even the more thinking about your question and getting to number 5, it's a lot of extra calculations or trying to figure on the zoning administrator's part, and trying to figure out what's going to create shade on a neighbor's property. It's just something that that's not really what my educational background or professional background has been in. So it would be, I think that's creating some work that is probably not very reasonable, or something that I would feel comfortable doing, or that, well, I shouldn't say feel comfortable, that it's just out of my comfort level. I'll just put it that way. And maybe that is getting too deep in the weeds when you're talking about trying to project what the shadow is going to be. So maybe that's another for let's remove number 5 altogether.
Sorry, I'm not trying to be difficult.
No, I just. Yeah.
I'm not sure, so I was just gonna add, that was one thing I was playing devil's advocate with myself, was who does the calculation on, whose discretion is it that tree is gonna obstruct, the efficiency of the solar panel, so I guess adding something in there that, leaves it for something to survey and prove that it will or will not be an obstruction. But otherwise, who is it to say that it's an issue? The solar panel owner who has number 5 to stand on, or I guess, we have to somehow prove that, somehow write it in or somehow figure out a way, but that was, I guess, one thing too, I play devil's advocate myself. I still believe 5 should be there because I see the point, but yeah, I think, to protect both the neighbor as well, I guess, I don't know, somehow, and like you said, that's not you to do those calculations, but, who is it to prove that, I think something that I would see it as the neighbor to have to survey and prove that as part of their, if it's an addition or a build, it's part of their calcs and their design and their zoning. And again, a tree is kind of, again, it could be there, but it may not actually obstruct it enough that is casting a shadow, but it may not be taken away from that home's consumption or use or intent of their solar array. I don't know how you solve that one, but another added thought out there for you.
I'm going to suggest looking at this a different way. Rather than the phrasing that is printed in number 5 as is, what about having the requirement read something like, during the conditional use process, the applicant may be required to obtain, I'm just going to sort of go off the cuff here, recordable permission from neighboring properties to limit or prohibit the construction or planting of trees that might cause an obstruction. In other words, in other words, not having the ordinance prohibit the neighbor from doing something in the ordinance itself, but have the ordinance describe the process by which this gets settled with the neighbor beforehand. I would be way more comfortable with that idea. Did I brain dump enough to get the idea across?
Well, I have during the CUP process, a conditional use process, the applicant may need permission from the neighbors to. I'm sorry, you kind of lost me.
Yeah, at that point, it's the idea that you had, that is, you obtain from the neighbors the ability to put a deed restriction or some other covenant on their property. I don't mean physically on their property, but, tag it at the courthouse as a restriction against the property. Okay? So that describes the process by which you would get that explicit permission. Okay? Mm-hmm. And then it gets to a point where, okay, maybe a neighbor can't agree to something. Then the applicant who wants to put the solar array on might need to iterate their own design. I'm not trying to make this more complicated, but I do think that a little extra complication in the process will save issues down the road.
Can we possibly table this and is there a rush to get this
No.
fixed? Because I think, obviously, I think it needs a lot more thought and finality, if you will.
Yeah, if this was tabled, it is on the council agenda for Tuesday, but that would just be tabled as well if we don't make a recommendation. If that is the will of the plan commission, that I guess I'm not in a hurry. I'd rather get it right than get it done.
I would,
And I was going to share that this came up when Water and Light went through and installed their system, and I was looking through our codes, and our codes woefully lacked very much on it. And after some discussion with our city attorney, he's like, well, it's permitted the way they have it presented now, so that's why that project went forward. But then we're like, well, let's have some discussion, because if these become more of a normal occurrence, which right now that's the only one in town, so there's no, I haven't had any applications for one of these types of systems since, we're having a really good discussion, but on something that may not even be an issue, or maybe something where, even if people actually want to put these things on their buildings, I'm guessing, or on their homes or commercial buildings, I'm guessing we might get a couple a year, if that. So, maybe, I guess with that in mind, maybe removing number 5 or altering number 5, and then just letting the conditional use permit be the review. So there will be ample amount of review with the conditional use as part of that process. And maybe that eases everybody's concerns. But I'm okay with tabling it, because I mean, if that makes everybody more comfortable, that's fine by me. I don't feel, I can't imagine anybody's going to want to put one up in the middle of winter. So it doesn't, yeah.
to echo what you said, do it right and not just get it done, so.
Yeah, no, that's fine.
Matt, would there be any benefit to, because I know we've been sort of spinning our tires here with this, all good discussion, all good thoughts, and I think up the table and for further, but is it beneficial to pass it up just for review and initial feedback to then pass down to the planning commission, so at least it's going somewhere in the meantime while we're also tabling it, getting their initial thoughts and then
No,
commission, or what are your thoughts?
No, this is in the zoning code, so this is under the plan commission's purview. I'd prefer it if we made a final recommendation to council. Council's been made aware of this ordinance, and they're supportive of creating this ordinance. I think it's the duty of the plan commission to find something that this group feels comfortable with to recommend to council for approval. And it doesn't guarantee that council doesn't change anything. That's well within their rights. I mean, but it is our job, or it's the plan commission's job to make the recommendation to council. So, I think we should probably have a final recommendation before we go back to them. That would be my, I guess, advice.
Commissioners, I'd like to ask you all two things. Number one, I would ask that whoever makes the motion, no matter whether it's a motion to keep it as is or strike language, but I think it would be appropriate to convey to the council that this particular point was a point of great debate.
Oh, yeah. I go to the meetings, and then also obviously Paul and Katie
Okay.
will be there.
Well, I would ask that, right?
Yeah.
So that it's
No, yeah.
sort of like a split decision on the Supreme Court. Yeah, here's the decision, but there was a lot of talk about this. So I would ask that. Yep, I would ask that. So it seems our choices here are either to table and work out some different language for 5, or go ahead and call the question with 5 as is. I guess I heard some maybe minor modifications to it. So whoever decides to make the motion here, go ahead and decide.
Katie had a question.
When you first brought this, didn't you say that you looked at some other communities' ordinances? Was it Cottage Grove, if I remember correctly?
Cross Plains.
What's that?
Cross Plains, and actually, I didn't, Paul did.
Okay. But I just wonder if we do decide to table, I wonder if we could seek out, cheat a little bit and look at what the other ordinances, kind of say, and if they speak to, this issue of number 5. Google's fun.
I like that idea.
I did too. I actually happened to speak to Bill Chang this morning over in Cross Plains about something else, and if I have the opportunity, I might even just ask him, hey, how is your ordinance working for you? He might have some ideas, or some opinion. So I think that's a really good idea.
CDF. Assuming it's under zoning. Holy. That's right, we're still on there. I'm probably not gonna be able to find it. All right, you know what? This isn't going to be productive. I should be taking notes. Okay. All right.
So as I said, I think our real viable choices are either to table or to accept number 5 as is or with minor modifications and vote on it. The only other alternative is one that we probably don't want to do, that's hash out all the language right here, right now. So.
The thing is I think we probably should hash out all the language right here, right now. Because then, I mean, I got to turn around and make sure this goes to council and they have either a red line or some sort of, like, because once this is approved, this is law. So, I guess thinking through that, maybe it probably is best if we table it and then send comments to me in the interim. But once again, it's still up to Plan Commission if anybody wants to make a motion.
Alder Piper will make a motion to table item 7A due to not being able to agree on the best language for item number 5 regarding obstructions and neighbor issues and heights of buildings.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second to table item 7A. Any further discussion?
Matt, you had a couple notes from us on a few other items in this. I assume you took note of that and you'll redraft and send for us and move further.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. I'll probably, hopefully sometime early next week, I'll try to redline this based on the notes from the night.
Okay.
I won't, most likely I won't have time tomorrow. So.
That's fine. I just know there was some other stuff
No.
in here that you probably took note of, so just making sure that got into the motion here, that were also the other items, not item 5 that got adjusted, or being made, so. No further questions.
All right, I have a motion and a second to table this item. All those in favor of tabling signify by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, we'll table this till January, but in the meantime, comments can be sent to Matt.
Yeah. If you don't see it sometime early next week, don't be bashful in giving me a reminder. All right.
Okay. Moving on to number 8A, public hearing to obtain citizens' views and provide an explanation of the Community Development Block Grant, AKA CDBG program, and community development needs in accordance with the City of Columbus Public Participation Plan.
All right.
So Matt, do you want to introduce
Sure, yeah.
this? Is there a little presentation
Yeah.
that goes with this?
Not so much. And really, this is my first time going through this one as well for a CDBG project. But according to the public participation plan, which was passed by council, the plan commission was identified as the citizen participation committee, I believe is the term that was used in the participation plan. That it's essentially one of those boilerplate type items that you have to do as part of your grant application process. So they basically give you suggested language and items that you have to complete as part of the grant application. So I'll explain. Why don't I back up first? Well, actually, did you open the public hearing?
I have not.
Okay. What?
I was just gonna say, I was gonna ask that, but
Yeah.
I probably spaced it through all my scattered and solar arrays, so.
No. Here, why don't I
All right.
just, yeah.
So, all right.
Hey, just out of curiosity, did we also approve number 5? Which are the minutes for
Yeah,
Yeah, we did.
We did do that.
Did? Okay.
you actually
Yep.
seconded it, according to my notes.
Eons ago, it seems like, right?
Yes,
After a long talk of number 5, it's the solar.
yes.
All right. So I'll open the public hearing for the CDBG program discussion.
Okay. Here, and if you don't mind, Chairperson Monday, I'll give an overview of kind
Yes,
of
very good.
why we're here.
I think
Okay.
that's excellent.
So, some of you may know, others may not. The city used to have a revolving loan fund that was funded through the Community Development Block Grant Program. The state of Wisconsin went through a program to basically take the money back from the cities. And we had roughly $423,000 in the loan program. At the time when we completed the CDBG close application, we probably had, I think, $35,000 owed to us from CERCES. As part of that, to get a bigger grant, we actually bought that out, and the benefit of that is now when CERCES repays us, those funds are defederalized and they stay with the city. So we have a grant coming to us in the total of $423,000. And it's a community development block grant. It's a non-competitive grant, which means basically when we apply for it, we get it. The one thing though is it's still community development block grant administered by DOA, but it's a HUD program. So we still have to meet all of the federal requirements that come with that. So we still have to address LMI or one of the other programs. There was 8 eligible activities that we had to select from. Council ultimately selected a few projects that will go towards a few stormwater projects that will hopefully go towards a long ways towards some flood mitigation measures, and the projects had to address areas. The area of benefit had to meet the LMI requirements, which means I've been very busy doing a survey of some of these areas that will be impacted by these projects. Ultimately, as I alluded to before, we had to pass the citizen participation plan, which outlines how citizens, this information will be made public, how people can basically request this and become involved. One of the items was to do a class 2 notice, or a notice 2 weeks before the meeting in the newspaper of record, which is the Beaver Dam Daily Citizen, basically noticing the meeting. And the first public hearing is the one tonight. It's just talking about basically a little more general about the CDBG program, but also what are the development goals and initiatives and the projects necessarily, or a general overview of kind of the projects in the city. And then the second one is going to be after the project has been approved, after we submitted our grant application. The second one will be specifically about the projects before they're completed. So essentially, we did the notice in the paper. We have not received any comments, and looking at who's online, there's nobody necessarily to comment. But I guess I'll speak broadly about how our projects and how what things we're doing at the city are meeting the CDBG guidelines and also community development goals of the city. One of the big things, and we're going to be talking about a little bit later, is the comprehensive plan. That is going to be one of the tools that we're going to use to complete some of the development goals of the city, but also at a certain point, the Roadmap 2050 plan and the feedback we got from that has been the driving force behind all of this. We've heard, stormwater is a large need that sometimes goes unaddressed in our community. And when we were looking at the alternatives for other projects, we felt that stormwater projects can address areas of LMI, but also go through and give the most benefit to the entire community by completing these projects. So that is, I guess, a little bit about the needs, and then talking a little bit about the goals, objectives. Any questions on CDBG or what we're doing with the public participation?
No.
LMI is low to moderate income.
Correct.
Are there any questions from commission members? If none, questions from the public? Nobody's present in person. Anybody
Nobody's
online?
in the waiting room, but you still have to ask 3 times, please. Thank you.
All right. I'll ask for a second time if there's any comments from the public, either commission members or the general public. And for a third and final time, any comments from the public? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing. All right. Thanks, Matt, for giving us the overview. All right. Moving on to item 8C, review final draft chapters of comprehensive plan. You handed out chapters 7 and 7.
7 and 7.
7 and
So
7. Ooh, sounds good.
On our website, with all that's going on this fall, I'm a bit behind the timeline I wanted to have for the comp plan, but hopefully here, with some time here at the end of the year to actually, honestly, working remotely for a little bit has helped me kind of get back on track because, exactly, the little interruptions, and I can sit down on my computer and just hammer some of this stuff out. So I'm trying to get back on track. Hopefully, I'm going to set something up early in the new year with the Plan Commission Council, have a joint meeting to kind of hammer out some of the future land use map, and then go from there with the approval process. But this is basically the draft chapters are out right now on the website for comment. They've been out there. I got a tweak chapter 2, and I was waiting for some information on local landmarks that I never really received, and I don't know if it's available. So I just need to make some minor adjustments to chapter 2. But other than that, everything right now is pretty much out there. and the future land use maps are coming together. I don't have a final draft of that yet, but I should here in the near future. But tonight I just wanted to go through the go through the land use element again. There's some pretty good information in this chapter. A lot of primary data that I collected using GIS and going through building permit records, and it's fairly interesting. Kind of sticking to the normal, I'm really just going to talk through the tables, and the text in a lot of cases refers to the tables. So really what I'm trying to do with the land use section is kind of look at past trends and try to predict, all right, well, this is somewhat the past trends. How is this going to look? What's this going to look like moving forward? How much supply do we have, and how long is it going to last? So one of the big things that utilizes lands is when we plat subdivisions for single-family homes. I mean, that takes up a lot of space. So what I did was, going back to the most recent plats, basically there's a lot of information that's recorded on the plats, which is very handy. I basically have gone through the last, as I said, last 20 years, and you can see on table 7.1 that 347 lots were created, totaling about the total of the land consumed was about 210, just over 210 acres. The total acres of the single family lots, however, about 100 acres. Some of that, keep in mind, community trails was platted, and a lot of that hasn't been built out yet. So some of that is a little bit deceiving if you're looking at it. But the other thing I like to use as the column is the percent of land used, because you build a subdivision, it's not all residential. There's streets, there's stormwater outlet or stormwater detention areas. So getting an estimate of, okay, when you build a subdivision, how much is actually used for residential and how much ends up being public type uses. So you can see there 74%, which kind of gives me a good number to work off of moving forward. So looking at 7.2, this was building permit information. Essentially what I did was we had reports from our building inspector that we'd received. I basically looked up every parcel, tabulated all the acreage for each of the lots, and you can go from there. You can see the total acres, the total lots, get an average size, and then the last columns, lots per acre, that's your density. So generally speaking, when you look at it, generally we're north of 3, at least 3 an acre, sometimes closer to 4 an acre, depending on the year, which I think is a very good sign, because once you get lower than 3, then generally you're considered that you're contributing to urban sprawl, and you're probably not maximizing the efficiency of the land. We don't. I mean, there is plenty of land available, or there's plenty of land around us that could be developed, but not all of it's available. So when we get land to develop, we need to make sure it is maximized. And then multifamily did the same thing, looking through not only number of lots, but number of units. And as you can see, there have not been that many units built over the last 10 years, 44 since 2010. So from there, in figure 1, it should be 7.1 below, this was where the GIS came in to play. So previously, using the previous future land use map from the 2009 plan, I went through the larger tracts of land that were undeveloped, generally on the west side of town, but west and south side of town, and totaled up, how much land is available, and then also how much land was available that was designated as residential. Got an estimate of how much FEMA, floodplain, or wetlands. Now, necessarily FEMA, both of these can be changed. Just because there's 144 acres showing does not mean there's 144 undevelopable acres. It just means right now that is what is, I guess, impeded from development. There has to be some considerable work done before you move forward on it. But it gives me a total, as of right now, a total buildable residential land of 312. Then I took the roughly 74% that is going to be used for your streets, roads, stormwater, other, and got 231 acres of buildable residential land for future development. Looking at the one thing is when you took the averages from table 7.2, when you look at the average per year of 2.63 acres and add it plus the 0.57 acres and divide that into 231, it looks like we have plenty of residential land for the next 72 years. Now, granted, there is some error to this because you note the first, in table 7.2, the first 4 or 5 years, there was a noticeable lag from the housing boom that happened in the late 2000s. And really nothing happened in Columbus between 2011 and 2014. So it gives us an estimate of how much supply we have. But even if things pick up, I think with the amount of land near near the core of our community, basically within the bypass, if you will, 151, I think there's plenty of residential land for the next 20 years and then some. So the commercial is where the calculations get a little more tricky. So 7.3 shows the number of lots and acres that were developed over the last 10 years. As you can see, there was 11 commercial lots and 2 that were classified as industrial. And so you can see about 100 acres was developed over the last 10 years. The one thing that's a little tricky here is, 2 of the industrial ones, Fromm and Enerpac, I mean, both of those built, bought a much larger lot than they needed to accommodate expansion. So it shows that, basically the land went from agricultural or some other use to some other, to an industrial use when it hasn't been, I guess, fully consumed. So it kind of throws off the averages a little bit and kind of really skews the numbers. So it's interesting because when you look at that and then you start looking at the figure 7.2, when you look at what's available and do the same estimate and remove the FEMA/wetlands to try to figure out what's buildable, you have 171 acres that's buildable after you remove your right of way and other items. So when you look at it, about an average of 10 acres a year divided by 170 is about 17 years. So it would kind of indicate in the 20-year horizon that there may be a shortage. But I would argue that there isn't the sample size for this is smaller than for the residential, because when you think residential, there was 100 and some lots developed and there was 44 multifamily units built. So there's more, you could get a better average. This has there's more variable to it. So I don't think it's necessarily accurate, but it does let us know that, if we had some things go quickly, that, we may have a shortage of commercial and industrial land in 20 years, which, quite frankly, it'd be a great problem to have because that means we've had a lot of commercial industrial growth, which is, I think, something that we want to see happen. So it's just something that needs to be monitored as we grow. The other thing I would note is, if we had more land that was developed into business parks, then you'd probably get a more consistent lot size. A lot of the development that's happened, it's just been somebody's carved off 20 acres here and there, and it hasn't, in a lot of cases, there hasn't been any sort of efficient way that the land's been divided. So I think there could be some efficiency gained from that as well. The next section kind of goes through each classification, basically defines it and then gives some policies. These were, it's kind of similar, and this is where I'm going to need comments eventually from Plan Commission and Council, but these are policies that have been in place that seem to be still applicable to each land use classification. Being that this is still in an open comment period, I'm not going to read through each one, but this goes to the land use classifications that we had was single family, multifamily, mobile home residential, industrial, downtown mixed use, neighborhood commercial district. So basically neighborhood commercial district is everything that isn't by the highway or isn't downtown, for lack of a better way to classify it. Highway commercial, and then recreational. One key thing to note is recreational, that's anything that's owned by the city that's free to use, or anything that's open to the public where you have to pay a fee. Like if you're going to the golf course, either the ones in town are open to the public most of the time. It might be closed one day for a private event, but generally it's open to the public, but you have to pay. I consider that recreational rather than having a separate class for the golf courses. Institutional would be city uses, conservancy. Now it's conservancy are overlays, so that's going to show your wetlands, your floodplains, maybe forestry. But really, in the city limits, it's going to be predominantly FEMA floodplain and wetlands. And the reason why you use it as a overlay is those layers can change with new modeling, new change in climate, and sometimes you can do a wetland delineation and show that this 10 acres of wetland actually isn't wetland anymore or never was wetland. So using it as overlay, it makes the most sense. And then rural preservation, which rural preservation really coincides with our rural development zoning district. Really, the rural development zoning district tends to be the larger tracts of land that are on the west side of the city. A lot of them were, when they were annexed, that's the default zoning unless the property owner petitions to have it zoned something else. So there's a lot of property that's zoned rural development. So this category basically meets that zoning designation. And then the goals, objectives, and policies are once again, goals, objectives, and policies, either that I saw in the previous comp plan that still seem to make sense. Some of them have been reworded or reworked, but I mean, these are things that seem to still apply to the city. And then I have added others that I think needed to be added. So it's still not it's available for comment. This will be going out to the website for future comment. As I said, the really purpose of the joint meeting between the Plan Commission and the council will be, I'll most likely I'll go through the goals, objectives, and policies, and I'll kind of go through each district, and then it's going to be talking about the future land use map and what do we want it to look like. Is it going to be similar to what was in the previous plan, or is there some significant changes that are needed? And I think we've talked about this when we've talked about the future land use map previously. I think looking at the previous plan, the one parcel or area of the city that I think is probably the most up for debate is what happens on the corner of Hall Road and Highway 16. The current comprehensive plan shows it as residential. I think with the growth of Fromm out there, and granted, I think 10 years ago, Fromm isn't what it is now, and having the heavy industrial use of the dog food plant out there, and then proposing residential right across the street, when also the residential has no contact or no pedestrian access to the rest of the town, seems it seems like there could be a better location for residential. Other than that, I mean, I think a lot of what has been previously discussed or planned seems to make a lot of sense as far as how it's laid out. But having that joint meeting, I think, is something that I've always felt that is needed. So I guess I'll at this point I'll open it up for any questions or comments, or if you need me to review anything else, let me know.
I just have a comment going back way to the beginning, and I'm sorry if I didn't want to interrupt way back when, but I just, maybe I'm not familiar with where it is, but Cardinal Estates and Community Trails, you have them listed as mixed uses, and I guess I'm not familiar with where those are.
So, okay, so Community Trails is, how do I put this? Well, yeah, you know where the water tower is on the southwest side of town? Yeah, southwest.
Yes.
It is basically that newer, there's a bunch of newer homes that have gone in just to the, I guess, east of there, and that's Cardinal Estates. So it was.
Is that, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep.
Is that, I guess I'm looking at mixed uses. Is that, am I misinterpreting what mixed use?
There's
No.
one large multifamily lot in
Yes.
there that's not been developed.
I guess I was thinking mixed use as in like, businesses on the first floor and residential on the second floor.
No, I meant mixed use as there's multifamily mixed in with, when I'm saying mixed use there, I'm talking like kind of a mix of land uses. So, there's multifamily land uses and single family land uses. I know our current comp plan says has it all as residential, which I think is a mistake. I think you have to at least have some separation for, single family, multifamily, and then obviously mobile home is a category which, is going to be unique all into of itself, and it's basically one property in town. So
I was just looking at mixed use as like a different definition. That's why I was asking.
Yeah.
So
And Community Trails was a subdivision that was platted back in 2007. The owner, unfortunately didn't fare very well when the housing bubble hit. He's since sold his land, and the land's platted. I mean, that's one where, theoretically speaking, something could happen tomorrow if the land was sold. And, they could start, well, not tomorrow. They'd have to go through and get, approvals to basically extend the street in and get probably a developer's agreement would be needed. But, the subdivision's been approved, it's been platted. From Plan Commission, there really wouldn't be anything they'd need to come to Plan Commission for. It would be get something agreed to with the city and move. So, but in that one as well, there was some parcels that were designated as multifamily and some as single family. So when I was going through and calculating how much land was for residential, it was for single family. That's what I was trying to do. I was trying to back into how many lots, how many acres are those lots. That makes sense.
yeah, it does. Again, I was at the mixed use development.
Yep,
I was like, where is that?
No, that's a good question. So.
I just had a couple of comments on some of the phrasing. Right at the bottom of page 7.2, the last sentence reads, based on the average growth rate in table 7-2, the estimated supply of housing for residential development would last approximately 72 years. Using that phrase, estimated supply of housing, makes it seem like there are like you were just saying about Community Trails, like empty lots ready to go, ready to build. That's when I think of
Well, it-
supply. I know what you mean there, like the amount of land that's planned for residential is adequate to support 72 years worth of housing development.
It probably should be the estimated supply of residential, or wait. It should say
Yeah.
supply of land, is what it
Yes,
should say.
yes.
Housing
yeah.
is, you're right,
Yeah.
that is a,
That seems more like a housing stock number from the Realtors Association, right?
yeah, no. That's a good catch, because it
I
doesn't
think
make sense.
it might have been similar in the, oh no, the phrase under commercial or industrial land
It does say,
seems right, yeah,
Okay.
okay.
but yeah, I mean, that's essentially what I was trying to back into, I was trying to figure out, you know, and to be completely honest, you know, some of these numbers in table 7.2, you know, when we had good years in 2017 and 2018, there was only a couple places you could get lots. I think, you know, if the market was flooded and there was like 2 or 3 developers building houses in Columbus, I mean, I wouldn't be shocked if we'd get double that in a year. Just with, there's demand out there, it's just there's not the supply. And I think there's a lot of demand coming from the Sun Prairie market where people don't want to, when we did the citizen outreach for a lot of this, it was, you know, I moved here from Sun Prairie because, you know, perceived crime, affordability, like there was a lot of it, or, you know, Sun Prairie grew too fast for the, you know, and they wanted to be in a smaller community. So the real challenge for the city is, all right, we want to grow, but we want to grow in a way that kind of maintains that small town feel. So, you know, 10 years down the line, it's not like, well, I'm just going to move out to Beaver Dam or whatever. So, but I think there's demand, especially for the residential. And, you know, if we can get, at a certain point, land will become available. It's just going to happen. I mean, I don't know when, but it's inevitable. And because there's demand there, and at some point somebody will meet the right price point to get it done. So, any other comments on the final draft, I should say?
Hearing none from other commissioners, I'll say thanks, Matt, for the information there. That brings us finally to item 9. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
What's the motion to adjourn?
Alder Piper will second that.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by aye. Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
All right,
Did he just
we are
oppose it?
adjourned. See you all in January. Happy
Yeah.
holidays.
Yeah, happy holidays, everyone.